like he shooting schools up, yellow wide body.
These two content creators likely won't be making a funny TikTok anytime soon. Both are locked up, charged with murder. But now one of the suspects is claiming there's a reason he gunned down a military vet outside a busy Houston mall. But will a jury possibly see it the same way? Thanks for joining us on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. Last month, 30-year-old Anthony Sanders was gunned down in a parking garage outside the Houston Galleria Mall. Now, two suspects are in custody, including maybe a familiar face to some, a TikTok creator with tens of thousands of followers. On June 3rd, Justin Guzman and his buddy Marco Sinan went to the Houston Galleria to do what content creators do, shoot content. It was Justin, Marco, and another man whose name hasn't been publicly released. So those three make their way onto the elevator, and there was someone else riding on that elevator too, a woman who had just gotten off of work. Now, one of the men reportedly asked the woman a question, but she didn't answer. And instead of just letting it go, one of them allegedly called her a stupid, ugly B-word. The woman told her fiancé, Anthony Sanders, what happened in the elevator. So he reportedly went driving around the parking garage to find the men who spoke to his fiancé that way. He found them. Then an argument happened, and Anthony and his fiancé, according to reports, were planning to leave the parking garage and likely go on with their day. But when leaving the garage, they were allegedly followed by Justin and Marco, plus whoever was driving them. According to reports, the suspects allegedly brake-checked them. Anthony reportedly got out of the car. There was some more arguing. Then bullets flew. Now, mind you, inside Anthony's car wasn't just his fiancé, but the couple's baby too. And here's the thing. The rounds, according to reports, were one-sided, not from Anthony's side, but allegedly from Justin himself. Police say the content creator, plus whoever was driving them, took off in the black Chrysler 300, but Houston PD pulled over the car during a traffic stop and spoke to the driver. When Justin got out of the car, investigators say 2 fired shell casings fell onto his lap. But those weren't the only shell casings. Investigators found 14 fired shell casings still inside that car. The driver of the car they were in claims that Anthony was trying to fight them because he thought that they were trying to holler at his fiancé in the elevator. And just want to point out here, the driver wasn't charged, but Marco and Justin were. So how did that happen? Well, after all three men were briefly detained and questioned, they were free to go. But on June 25th, Marco was arrested and booked into jail. And after being named as a suspect, Justin turned himself into police 5 days later. Justin, who allegedly was the shooter, told police that he thought Anthony Sanders had a gun kept in his waistband when he approached the car. Justin also claimed Anthony had a knife. But investigators say no knives or firearms were found in the vicinity of or within Anthony's vehicle or in the area of the parking garage where the shooting took place. Both Justin and Marco remain in jail. Marco's bond is set at $1 million, while Justin's bond is $450,000. But the defense is hoping to have his bond reduced because he cooperated with law enforcement. But for Anthony Sanders' family, things will never be the same. According to a GoFundMe, his loved ones write, "Anthony Sanders was abruptly taken from us, leaving behind shattered hearts and unfinished dreams due to the senseless act of murder. Anthony was a devoted father, beloved fiancé to Selena, cherished son, nephew, cousin, and brother whose kindness warmed every heart around him. His greatest joy was his precious baby boy and his beautiful fiancée Selena, the family he passionately worked to support." In the wake of this profound loss, Anthony's grieving mother humbly invites anyone who wishes to support the family to donate, especially for Selena, whose care and well-being are now a priority. So was this really self-defense, or is this a new defense strategy? Let's get some insight from criminal defense attorney Bridget Williams. Bridget, always great to see you. With what we know so far, do you see self-defense here? I mean, the suspects claim that Anthony Sanders came towards their car with what appeared to be a knife and a gun, but there was no knife found at the scene, no gun found. Plus, the victim had his child in the car. What are your thoughts about this case?
Well, I think it's going to be an uphill journey trying to prove self-defense if there was no gun found, there was no knife found, there was no weapon found. And that just may be something that may not have been found right now at the time. There could be more evidence that is displayed and comes to light as we continue to move forward in this particular case, especially before it goes to grand jury. So some evidence continues to pan out prior to it going to grand jury. But if it is, as the defendant does say, then he will have a strong self-defense claim. The victim in this case walked to find him. They actually, I think the attorney in this case says that the victim walked 3 flights of stairs to find him and then followed behind him. So there's intent there. So he will have some type of self-defense conversation at least, and it'll just be up to a grand jury to decide if there was a probable cause for a charge in the first place, and then an actual jury to decide if there was reasonable doubt.
And the alleged shooter, that being Justin Guzman, according to investigators, they found 14 shell casings in the car, and some of them were even falling off of his lap once he got out of the car when he was initially detained. But in your opinion, given that the defense is now claiming self-defense, and I'm always thinking, why fire off more than a dozen rounds if this was truly self-defense, and I hate to say it this way, but like you would think maybe one or two, but not 14. It seems very intentional by that point.
Yeah, unless maybe he's missing, right? So I think that's if he's shooting and then not missing, and if the alleged victim or the victim is continuing to come at him, and then he's shooting at the person, then he's shooting in order to stop him from coming towards him. And so again, I think that's something that will come out in the specific evidence of a trial if it does move forward to a trial. Okay, well, he shot more than two times because he missed. Then after that, he shot more than five times because he missed. And so it just depends on what that evidence continues to bring. To your point, though, if a person is shooting someone more than 10 times and they don't miss, then it does give rise to, well, this doesn't necessarily feel like self defense anymore. This does feel very intentional.
And reports are saying that this kind of started over the content creators, because there was three of them in that car, that they were in the elevator with the victim's fiance. They called her a stupid, ugly B word after she didn't answer one of their questions. And, I understand that Anthony did confront them, given that, most men might possibly do that in defense of their loved one. But even it seems like afterwards, the suspects kind of wanted a reaction. According to some of those reports that we were talking about earlier, they were brake checking Anthony and his fiance. Anthony gets out of the vehicle and there's more arguing that happened, and the shots are fired from the content creator car, I should say. But what's your reaction to kind of the suspects' roles of antagonizing, or what seems to be antagonizing, the victim's fiance first in a way?
Yeah, I think that is something that one is completely out of line, right? If someone doesn't want to speak to you, they don't have to. No one is
Right.
required to speak to you in any way, shape, or form. And they don't deserve to be called names because they decided not to speak to you. So that's first. But next, after that, the fiance decides to get out of his vehicle, go and find these individuals. So you took time out of your day to go and physically try to find these people. And so I don't know how long that lasted in the search to try to find these individuals, but that could have been avoided as well. So in my opinion as a lawyer, I would not have advised the client to go out and try to find a argument with someone, because that could quickly escalate. You have no idea if those people have guns, if they have weapons. You have no idea what that could escalate to. And so that starting point only escalated that at that point. If the alleged victim went to find them, that's going to escalate it. And then after that, I would say that the suspects finding or antagonizing, I would say, the alleged victim now at this point, it just continues to escalate. Every step just escalates it more, 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 more. And so that's going to be a journey for the defense counsel, and they're proving of self-defense. They're going to have to try to combat those things. But again, as more evidence comes out, they'll be able to use that.
And are you surprised even by the brazenness of this crime? This was the Galleria Mall. I mean, it's a popular mall. A lot of people go there. A bystander could have been hit. Somebody who had no part in this kind of altercation, this verbal altercation by that point. But still, just the fact that this happened in public, what are your thoughts overall just about this happening at the Galleria Mall?
Yeah, happening at the Galleria Mall or just in broad daylight, right? This is a matter that's happening in the middle of the day at a public place where several people go with their families on a day-to-day basis. There have been several reports of different assaults and matters of that nature happening at the Galleria Mall, though, in different parts of the parking areas and the parking lots. So it is something that I wouldn't say I'm completely surprised at something happening, but I am surprised at a shooting happening, right? In such a popular area where people are there with their families, even the victim in this case being there with his fiance and child.
Yeah. And just picking her up from work. That's all that he was there to do. And then obviously he was told what had happened. And then, he, I think, was trying to do the right thing, right? But in terms of just, Anthony Sanders was just starting his day like normal, it seemed like, until this happened. What are your thoughts on just the fact that he was there just to pick up his fiance from her job, and their child, again, was in the car when this happened? So it didn't seem like, you would think from their perspective that there might have been intent to really escalate this type of situation. Maybe it was just like a, hey, don't speak to my fiance, that type of way kind of, interaction. But it seemed like it just escalated from there, where now guns were drawn, obviously from Justin Guzman and his, TikTok friend's car. But what are your thoughts on just Anthony Sanders was just there to pick up his fiance?
Yeah, and I think that's really heartbreaking, right? Someone they go to just pick up their fiance from work and they have only intentions. They leave their home, they're going to pick up their fiance, loved one from work, and their goal is to pick them up, bring them back home safely. Have no idea that anything like this would ever happen. My heart really goes out to the fiance as well, because she's probably feeling like she's in the middle of this, all these things. And so what I would say is that a person that is going through that, my heart just really goes out to him, and to the family of Mr. Sanders.
Going back to the self-defense claim, do you think, because Justin Guzman was able to meet with investigators 2 weeks after the shooting, because he was detained originally, then he was released, then he turned himself in about a few weeks later, but do you think that he had enough time to kind of craft a story that he believed that Anthony had a knife and a gun? Because why not just stay on the scene? They all fled after this happened. Why not just stay and report it if this was truly a self-defense case?
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to say, why not do this or why not do that? But when we're not in the moment, it can be really difficult because there is a lot of adrenaline going. There can be just a lot of just being afraid as well. You don't know what's going on. And a lot of times, attorneys advise you not to speak with the police without an attorney being present, right? That is normally the advice. So if he decided, okay, well, maybe I should stay and or leave and go speak with an attorney first, then that is something that he has his absolute right to do. So he has the opportunity to talk with his attorney first to make sure that he's protecting himself prior to going to speak with officers. So I would say that it's easy for us to say, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that right away with officers? But when we're not in that position, it is, I think it's a lot more difficult to go immediately to the police and say, again, it's adrenaline going. This man was following behind me in the mall, and then I decided to follow behind him. I thought he had a gun. I thought he had a knife, different things. I think it can just sometimes be a little more difficult than that.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, we're not in their position, we're not in their shoes, so who knows what we would do in their shoes or anything like that. And then Justin Guzman's attorney is trying to have his bond reduced from $450,000 to just $50,000. Do you think that a judge will actually go for that?
I don't know if the judge will agree to go all the way down to 50,000. Judges normally try to meet the defense counsel and prosecutors somewhere in the middle where both parties can find common ground. So if his bond is at 450,000, defense counsel is asking for 50,000. It is not unheard of for a judge to reduce it down to half of that, right? And maybe have some requirements that may be conditions of bond. Maybe he has to have an ankle monitor where we're tracking him now. Making sure that he's not going to the Galleria or making sure he's not going anywhere near the victim's family. Just making sure that he is being tracked. So that wouldn't be unheard of either. So I could see a court reducing it down maybe to half of that with some additional bond conditions.
And I'm interested, Bridget, in knowing your opinion on the fact that when Justin Guzman was initially arrested, I think we were kind of talking in-house just about how many followers he initially had around the time of his arrest when he had, or I should say when he had turned himself in. And then it seems like it's doubled from there. Why do you think we're seeing kind of an increase in his follower count over on TikTok after his arrest, after he's been accused of murder?
I would say this: people love a good story, and so when people are attracted to a good story, and this has already just blown up into national news, where people are just kind of following through to see what's going on with it, and so I don't see why people would not be following him to try to see and get more evidence. I even seen where the prosecution has laid out prior of his different posts that he's had, and they've brought that into evidence to talk about with the court about his bond reduction. So that's another thing. Things that people post online can be brought into evidence for your bond conditions or just for your case in general. But I think that people just really love a good story, and they're going to continue to follow along, especially on his social media and different news outlets about that as well.
Yeah, and especially since this content was kind of, I guess, funny-ish videos, and then he's accused of murder. I think a lot of people are always interested in how that switch up kind of happens too. And Bridget, I'm curious, what do you think will happen in this case next? Do you think it'll end in some type of plea deal, a plea offer of some type of sorts, or do you think that the defendants will take the risk and go to trial?
Well, based on the evidence that we have right now, I could see it moving forward to a trial setting with a self-defense claim because the matter is that he's saying that there's self-defense, but there's no gun or weapon found. Then no prosecutor is going to move forward and say, yes, this was a self-defense matter. And so unless additional information is moved and brought forward, I could see this definitely being a trial case.
And do you see it's possible that co-defendant might turn on co-defendant and say, yeah, it was all him, he did this on purpose, and to try to negate, the other person's responsibilities? Do you see that possibly happening?
The thing is that you just never know what can come out with co-defendants. The prosecution can make different offers to each person. They don't have to make the same offer to each person. And it depends on also what their charges are. One person is charged with murder, the other person is charged with murder too. I think it just depends, right? The prosecution can make an offer to this person. Well, if you tell us this information, then we can reduce your sentencing or we can reduce this down. So it just really just depends on what the prosecution does and who the other person's defense counsel is, if they can all come to some type of agreement.
And I guess we'll see when that happens, if that happens, and I guess what happens next in this case. Bridget Williams, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this. Before we sign you off, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't think there's anything else to add. I think the only thing that we'll see here is just we want to see how this continues to play out and what evidence is brought forward. I'm really interested to see what additional evidence the state brings forward in this case.
Especially because you never know what can happen in trials. Sometimes you think it's going to go one way, it goes a completely opposite way. So we'll see what happens in the end. Yep. Bridget Williams, again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And again, Justin and Marco remain behind bars as of this recording, but Justin is scheduled to have a bond hearing this week. Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner.